Welcome back to Bumblebee, everyone. Today's video is all about the top 10 most significant scientific breakthroughs in history. Let's go. First up, I feel pretty obvious, the wheel. The wheel was invented in the 4th or 5th millennia BC in Lower Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq, where initially they started as a carved stone used as a pottery wheel. It was only in 2000 BC that the discs began being hollowed out to make a lighter wheel that the Sumerians integrated into pulley systems. Then the ancient Greeks got a hold of them and developed the idea of the wheel, but still light and hollow, but strong enough to carry loads. This innovation led to two major advances in two areas. First, transport. The wheel began to be used on carts and chariots. Obvious, so yeah. Second, and more importantly, it contributed to the mechanization of agriculture for things like crop irrigation, and then also craft industries like the windmill or the watermill. We do have an oldest wheel found. In 2002, archaeologists uncovered a wooden wheel in Slovenia, and they established that this wheel is between 51,000 and 5,350 years old. This is the oldest wheel in the world used specifically for transportation. The other old-ass wheel out there, ranking numero uno, is the stone potter's wheel found in the Sumerian city of Ur. And while itself it dated back to 3129 BC, fragments of the wheel-thrown pottery that were found were around 5,500 years old. So that's some evidence that the use of the wheel is even older than Slovenia's, driving one, at least for pottery. Irregardless of who did it first, both of the oldest known wheels are about the averaging point of 5,350 years old. That means their invention postdates the invention of agriculture, boats, and even woven clothes. Wheels before pants, guys. Alright, a little less of a physical discovery would be the Copernican system. The Earth-centered universe of Aristotle and Ptolemy held sway on Western thinking for almost 2,000 years. Then, in 1543, while on his deathbed, a star is born. Kidding and kind of not. Polish astronomer Nicholas Copernicus published his idea that the sun is a motionless body at the center of the solar system with the planets revolving around it. Historically, in a society where Christians tended to rip you apart alive for having the audacity to bring science into the how the universe works conversation, there's really no better time than to drop a big logical discovery than when you're gonna die anyways. So, before the Copernican system was introduced, astronomers believed the Earth was at the center of the universe. Such a model is called a heliocentric system. The ordering of the planets known to Copernicus in the new system is what we now recognize as the modern and accurate ordering of these planets. The Copernican system, by stirring the pot with news that the sun was the main character of the story, immediately led to a simple explanation of both the varying brightness of planets and retrograde motion. The planets in such a system naturally vary in brightness because they're not always in the same direction from the Earth. The retrograde motion could be explained in terms of geometry and faster motion for planets with smaller orbits. Thank you, lightning bolt! Next up's electricity. Electricity had always existed, but since the discovery of electricity and the development of electrical technologies, it's had a profound impact on human society. Technology being the biggest, thus why it won't be on the list today, and neither will AI or the internet. Sure, they're significant discoveries, but they also aren't really. I feel they double as technically an invention because if electricity hadn't been discovered, this crap couldn't have happened. So, just my opinion. Benjamin Franklin is credited for discovering electricity in the 1752 experiment with his kite, but it began so much longer ago. From the writings of Thales of Miletus, it appears that Westerners knew about electricity and harnessing it from as long ago as 600 BC, specifically from rubbing amber pieces together. There was very little progress with that, obviously, though, until the English scientist William Gilbert in 1600 described electrification and coined the term electricity from the Greek word for amber. As a result, Gilbert is called the father of modern electricity. Then in 1660, Otto von Guericke invented a crude machine for producing static electricity, and Francis Hawksby made improvements that provided experimenters with a ready source of static electricity. Progress quickened after the Leyden jar was invented in 1745 by Pieter van Mosenschrock, and Henry Cavendish by measuring the conductivity of materials, and Charles A. Coulomb by expressing mathematically the attraction of electrified outside bodies began the quantitative study of electricity. Then, and only then, in 1752, here comes Benji to steal the credit. Benjamin Franklin came up with the idea that electricity had a positive and negative element and that electricity flowed between the elements. Building upon Franklin's work, many other scientists to follow studied electricity and began to understand more, leading to the moment where electricity is what it is today. For example, in 1879, after like 22 other people had invented the light bulb before him, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb and patented it, and our world has been brighter ever since. One of my least favorite things to do at the hospital is up next, you guys, it's medical imaging. You have no idea how long it takes to remove all of these stupid little piercings. It is such a hassle. But allowing doctors to see beyond what is hidden under the skin without having to cut it open has helped ensure modern medicine is the least invasive possible without causing any additional damage and ensure the best outcome for patients. So win, 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 and a loss for me. From x-rays and radiography to MRI scans and ultrasound technology, medical imaging really showcases how science and technology are complementary disciplines. As one advances, so does the other. Wilhelm Röntgen, a German physicist, discovered x-rays in 1895. X-rays go right through some substances, like flesh as you know, but also wood, and they're stopped by others, such as bone and lead, but it'll leave an image imprint on the surface behind it, which he'd actually discovered on accident. This allows x-ray to be used to see broken bones, your teeth, or inside of a suitcase, which makes them useful for doctors, but also a myriad of professions. For this discovery, Röntgen was awarded the first ever Nobel Prize in Physics in 1901. Raymond Damadian made an important contribution to the fields of science and medicine when he built the first nuclear magnetic resonance, aka NMR, body scanner in July of 1977. Damadian was instrumental in adapting the technology to use on the human body where, as a scanner, it could detect abnormal tissue, and in 1974 he received his patent for the successful MRI machine. His original MRI machine is actually housed at the Smithsonian, and if I remember, I'm not sure, don't hold me to it, the TV show Bones actually featured it. I could keep listing you guys the impressive medical imagery discoveries and their brilliant finders, but we got more on the list to cover. But while we are still talking medical, let's cover anesthesia and antibiotics. While the use of mold to treat infections was first noted by ancient civilizations, such as the indigenous people of South and North America, as well as Egyptians, even the Greeks, in 1928 Alexander Fleming discovered the first antibiotic, the most coined one, on accident. Because the way the bacteria avoided mold on the petri dish was so strange, homie dived into finding out why. Turns out he'd grown penicillin G using mold and fungi. Antibiotics revolutionized medicine in the 20th century, and together with vaccinations, have almost completely eradicated many once common diseases such as TB. For millions of lives that antibiotics have and continue to save worldwide, antibiotics are a must on the countdown. Painkillers are only three main types and each work in a different way. They are non-steroidal anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen, perfect for headaches, joint pain, period pain, list goes on. Then there's paracetamol, which is like acetaminophen, which is also good for minor or medium pain levels. The third category contains weak and strong OPs. Can't say the full word, but these are the bad boys of the pain world for the real big injuries, diseases, and surgeries. They activate an area of nerve cells in the brain and body called OP receptors that block pain signals between the brain and the body. The fact in modern times that we can get rid of a headache with a pill, be cut open during an operation, or even have a limb removed without our mind registering pain is incredible. Back to the discoveries not solid under the touch, the theory of relativity. When Albert Einstein first published the general theory of relativity in 1915, he likely couldn't have imagined that 100 years later, astronomers would test the theory's predictions with some of the most sophisticated instruments ever built, and the theory would pass each test. General relativity describes the universe as a fabric of space-time that is warped by large masses, the same warping that causes gravity, which quashes hillbilly Isaac Newton's previous thought of it being an internal property of mass. Pwned. So, a prediction of this model is that the acceleration of masses can cause ripples in space-time, or the propagation of gravitational waves. With a large enough mass, such a black hole or a neutron star, these ripples may be detected by astronomers on Earth. Well, like I said, some of these nerds ganged up to test it out, and in September 2015, the LIGO and Virgo collaboration detected gravitational waves for the first time, propagating from a pair of merging black holes some 1.3 billion light years away. Since then, the two instruments have detected several additional gravitational waves, including one from a two-merging neuron star. I feel like people wouldn't expect this one, but natural selection is next. Natural selection is a mechanism of evolution. Organisms that are more adapted to their environment or more likely to survive or pass on the genes that aided their success. This process causes species to change and diverge over time. Having co-published it in 1858, Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace are actually jointly credited with coming up with the theory of evolution by natural selection. Obviously though, one dude's been getting all the cred the whole time, so I'm clearing that up for you guys. In natural selection, it's true that only the strongest survive, not in a literal sense of strength. More so in genetic mutations that are beneficial to an individual's survival are passed on through reproduction. And if you don't have what you need to survive, you'll die and not reproduce, and your weak-ass genetics are gone into the void foreverness. Thus, the theory is that those of us who are alive, animals or otherwise, are the result of those who are able to overcome and adapt. My close friend and I often discuss how this affects psychology of humans. In ancient times, we often duked it out. We killed each other, ate each other, war, gluttony, pillaging. What that means is out of the humans of the past, only the strongest physically and mentally lived on to breed and survive. That means only the cruelest and strongest are the most tactile. That means the humans we have now, us, are the ones that survive by being the killer and by being the eater. Kinda crazy, right? Next up, a personal fave of mine, carbon dating. The only reason I can stand here in these videos and tell you, well, this vase was from this time period, and these bones are from this period, isn't because someone scratched a date into them, it's because of carbon dating. This crap is the glue that helps us hold historical context and discovery together. Without it, it'd be a lot more work for us to determine literally anything of the artifacts, bones, structures, and all the other crap we unearthed. Willard Libby is the guy who mastered it in the late 1940s, building upon the work of Martin Kamen and Sam Rubin, who discovered the carbon-14 isotope in 1940. Radiocarbon dating or carbon-14 dating is a scientific method that can accurately determine the age of organic materials as old as approximately 60,000 years. Libby's method remained the only way to measure carbon-14 in samples for several decades and was long considered the most accurate means of dating carbon decay, said David Mazziotti, a U Chicago professor in chemistry. Today, scientists also use a different way to measure carbon-14 called accelerator mass spectrometry, which can get more precise results from far smaller samples. And of course, we can't talk science without saying how the periodic table was a massive discovery. In 1789, French chemist Antoine Lavoisier was grouping the elements as metals and non-metals. 40 years later, German physicist Johann Wolfgang Daubrien observed the similarities in physical and chemical properties of certain elements. So he also arranged them in groups, but of 3, increasing the order of atomic weight he called triads. Russian chemist Dmitry Mendeleev then noticed that when arranged by atomic weight, the chemical elements lined up to form groups with similar properties. He was able to use this to predict the existence of undiscovered elements and no errors in atomic weights. So in 1869, Russian chemist Dmitry created the framework that became the modern periodic table, leaving gaps for elements that had yet to be discovered. The later discovery of elements predicted by Dmitry, including gallium, scandium, and germanium, verified his predictions, and his periodic table won universal recognition. In 1955, the 101st element was named after him. In 1913, Henry Moseley of England confirmed the table could be made more accurately by arranging the elements by atomic number, which is the number of protons in the atom of an element. UNESCO named 2019 the International Year of Periodic Table to mark its 150th anniversary. And of course, never the least, but it is the last, molecular structure of DNA. So much of our modern day research revolves around genetics, from pinpointing the causes of genetic disorders such as Huntington's disease, to manipulating the genome of animal models and observing how this affects their behaviors. Even outside of life sciences, DNA profiling has changed the world of forensic science to improve the criminal justice systems. That was a quote from Lucy Lewis, a PhD student at Cardiff University, and it's one I feel rings incredibly true. Many people believe that American biologist James Watson and English physicist Francis Crick discovered DNA in the 1950s. Like a lot of other discoveries on this list, credit is not being given where it's due. DNA was first identified in the late 1860s by Swiss chemist Friedrich Meister. Then, in the decades following Friedrich's discovery, other scientists carried out a series of research efforts that revealed additional details about the DNA molecule, including its primary chemical components and the way in which they joined around one another. Without the scientific foundation provided by these pioneers, Watson and Crick, most often credited for the discovery itself, may have never reached their groundbreaking conclusion on February 28th of 1953, that the DNA molecule exists in a form of a 3-dimensional double helix. helix. A DNA molecule is made up of two linked strands that wind around one another to resemble a twisted ladder in a helix-like shape, and they have a seemingly endless variety of chemical patterns that create instructions for the human body to follow in its development. Your skin will be this color, your eyes this color, your voice this deep, your hair this curly, but also it decides which kidney will get cancer, when to start developing dementia, or genetic mental diagnosis like BPD. DNA works for us, but it definitely works against us. Alrighty, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more from us, and until next time, comment down below what discovery you believe benefited us the most.